Nice. All right, cool. So, everyone, we are going to be doing an intro to elk hunting with Johnny Wagner. What's up, Johnny?
Nothing much, buddy. Nothing much.
So, for you guys that don't know, Johnny is a longtime pro staffer. Started as field staff, pro staff now. You guys probably don't hear that word thrown around much. We actually only have a handful of these guys in the club, and as we continue to grow, obviously they'll take on more than likely like a regional director type role and things like that. Most of them have already done that, but just went a couple different routes. But as we continue to grow, we'll get back into that. So Johnny's our main man out west. He has been for a long time. We have a lot of guys that go out west, like out of staters and things like that. We have a lot of members out west. But Johnny's definitely the person that I always like to hit up, him in a select few when I have questions personally on going out west. But I won't talk too much. I wanted Johnny to introduce himself, tell y'all a little bit about himself, and we'll get it on into this.
All right, guys. So my name is Johnny Wagner. I'm a lifelong resident of the state of Wyoming. Been here for 26 years this month. So entire life. I have about 20 years of elk hunting experience that I can actually say is experience. I started calling elk when I was 6 years old. Bugled in my first bull at the age of 7. So, and started elk hunting on my own tag at the age of 12. This is my 14th season I'm currently in right now. I believe I've taken 7 elk, and I know that doesn't seem like an extreme number, but on average, an elk hunter has a 10% success rate on an over-the-counter tag. So, and overall, it's a 15% success rate nationally for even draw hunts. So, yeah, that's pretty much a bit about me. I'm father, 3 kids. So that's pretty much it.
Nice, brother. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to get on here. So we're going to dive into it, team. We're going to jump into it. Johnny's going to start us out. He's got a few different topics. I'll let him start. That way he gets his rhythm with how he wants to do it. But pretty much he's going to walk you through what you need to do to be able to get out west and hunt some elk.
So in most Western states, you have a lot of draw hunts. And I know Wyoming for non-residents is a 100% draw on any big game species. Unless there's, and I could be wrong, I know as of last year, it was still, you could buy a leftover tag in the state of Wyoming and come hunt elk out here, which are very slim. But that being said, there are 2 major things that on your gear list that you need to invest into. Everything else kind of just becomes a minor flaw. I mean, your rifle, your bow, or whatever, that's obviously important. But the 2 main things I honestly suggest, and this goes for anyone, is a good set of boots and a good pack. I mean, that those 2 items hand down will ruin your hunt if you don't have them or proper for you. I run a Badlands 2200 pack. It works great for me. I've hauled out in the last 2 years 4 elk with it. So it holds up, it's durable. But your boots, I mean, guys, your feet will kill you out here. It's 100%. You are either constantly moving or you're going up and down ridges all the time. And bad boots lead to a bad back, and a bad pack leads to a bad back. And it's just, these animals are heavy. You're looking at anywhere from 60 to 100 pounds, depending on the size of the elk and what quarter it is that you're going to end up packing out of there. And overall, a 900-pound animal. So those are 2 major things that if you're looking at coming out west, it's something I'd invest into. And a third one, if I had to give an honest to God suggestion, it's glass. Use your eyes more than you use your legs in anything. So that's definitely like the 3 things I'd say that you need to look at. And then
nice.
Another important aspect of elk hunting is a lot of people, I'm part of many groups on Facebook and stuff like that. A lot of people ask, what bow or what broadhead. I'm going to give you a very simple rundown on those real quick. Most states allow you to hunt elk with a 243 or larger. and they do it. I mean, that seems kind of crazy how such a little round put down such a big animal, but they will. I started elk hunt with the 243 personally, and then most states require a 50-pound draw limit on elk, and I know that can vary state to state. Obviously, always check regulations. With that being said, when it comes to your guys' broadheads and things like that, the ones that are sharp and cut, they work. I mean, I always suggest 100 grain or heavier broadhead, and a bow that is pushing 60 pounds or more on elk, just because, you know, you hit a shoulder blade, your arrow's stopping even with a 70-pound bow. I mean, at 40 yards, I've seen it happen time and time again. So, and practice with your equipment over and over and over again. Just because they're a large animal does not mean that you won't miss them. And my suggested starting caliber for, you know, an elk hunt on a rifle, I'd honestly start with a 25-06, because 25-06, you know, really great round, decent recoil. Most people can handle it. I started hunting with the 243, and then I got 25-06 that I hunted with as well. They're great guns, and I even go all the way up to, I hunt now with the 300 Win Mag or 338 Win Mag for these elk. So you want heavy bullets, hard hitting, and something that's going to stop that animal.
Now, let me ask you, Johnny, I'm just going to jump in here if you don't mind, since you kind of touched on that. So as far as like the terrain, obviously we know it's, you know, it's not out in the east. I don't know if you've been over to the east. I think you said like as far as you've been was like Missouri, right?
No, I've deer hunted part of Georgia.
Oh, okay. So you have an idea of the mountains, which the Appalachian Mountains run down there. So what, as far as, I guess my question was, you were mentioning sight over walking and things. So I mean, you're doing like a lot of glassing. I mean, are you like behind optics like a good % of the time, or like, are you looking for like sign and stuff?
Me personally, I'm more or less looking for sign. So most areas that you get into elk, I mean, you can catch them all the way down in the desert areas. I mean, that's Arizona even. They have mountains, but most of their states, you know, low elevation or high elevation deserts, you know. And out here we have them in our deserts too, or what they call a desert or high plains. And that's where glassing is you need to be behind some optics, because if not, you can cover ground all day long and you'll never know what could be out there. I hunt timber mainly, but ever since we had the wildfire 2 years ago, we've gotten into more open area versus heavy timber. So we did invest into some good optics and started doing a lot more glassing, because it makes a huge difference. I mean, you might not realize it, but you might end up 3 or 4 miles from the truck and not even realize you made it that far in on a day hunt. And, you know, you got to know that that's where you want to go if you want that animal, not just kind of wandering aimlessly.
No, that makes sense. Now, I might have missed this. Sorry, some guys were trying to get in the chat. What boots do you usually rock?
So I actually have, I used to use Irish setters, just any brand. I can't remember the exact model of Irish setters. I think they were elk trackers. I use those. They held up okay. But for the last 2 years, I've actually ran my brother's government issue Army boots that he had after he retired. That's just, he gave them to me and said, run these. And I've ran those for 2 years now, and I haven't had much of an issue. Now they've held up. They haven't fallen apart. But I know that if I could give an honest to God suggestion on affordable boots, I'd look at Irish setters. Whichever ones you're more comfortable with. You want something that's going to be warm but lightweight. And then on the higher end, you know, Kintrex. Kintrex is a really good one out here, Zamberlan. Those, everyone I've talked to out here, man, that's what they suggest. Those boots are their go-tos.
Yeah, that was kind of where my question was going. Like, what do you do, like, as far as lowest price to highest price? So if like price wasn't an issue, that's what you'd go with?
If price wasn't an issue, I would probably go with Kintrex boots.
Gotcha. Cool. So I mean, being it's important. I'm surprised those Army boots hold up. You know, I was in the Army for a while, and I don't know. Maybe it was just me or the area I was in. I thought the soles on them always seemed really good, but the ankle part, it was always weak. I actually had bought a different pair from the, what was it called? The dang shopping place or whatever.
The commissary.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they've held up pretty well. I do agree the ankle spot is a little different, but I normally wear steel-toed cowboy boots for most of the time anyway, so ankle support's not exactly very common.
Yeah, Lamar said summer or winter. Obviously, it's got to be the summer because they have they're thin, right? They're like socks almost.
I have winter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and right now I'd really go for something lighter because I've never seen it hit 90 degrees in September out here, but it's 90 degrees today.
Oh man.
It's supposed to be 32-degree lows next week.
Nice. I'm surprised, man, with the Army boots. That's probably a first I've ever heard that. I didn't. Maybe, I mean, obviously, I've never been out west, so what do I know? But I've actually never worn my Army boots outdoors, so I don't know. But outdoors meaning like hunting or fishing. But I'll have to try them. I got like 4 or 5 pairs in my closet. I'll check it out, especially when I got a pair of boots that are wet.
Yeah, that's what my brother. Both my brothers are in the Army, and one brother, man, that's all he runs is his combat boots.
Some of them love them, man. Some of them love them. Me, I got flat feet and bony ankles, so maybe it's just my foot. Okay, cool. So let's see, Johnny. So let me throw in a couple questions for you here, and then we can keep moving. So someone asked about, since an opinion on the 270 for elk, working on the chance to go, and that's the only bigger rifle that they can take or have.
270 is more than enough. I've watched. So we used to have an elk camp of about 10 people, and I bet 5 out of 10 of those people ran 270s versus 300 Win Mags. You know, the women are smaller folks, or just people. That's what they had. They work great. I mean, I've seen more elk put down with the 270 than I have a 30-06 out here. It's super common where I'm at, and it's a really good round for elk.
Nice. You know, we did a ballistics webinar with Brian, you know, Brian Halchek, and he mentioned the same thing. He's like, if you literally only can have one, he's like, I do. Like, he mentioned another one, but 270 was one of the like top ones he had mentioned.
Yeah. After you break that 270 mark, I mean, especially if you're looking for a well-rounded Western gun, I mean, I shoot antelope with my 300 Win Mag, so it's, you know, that's our smallest big game animal. And I have to drop down to 150 grain rounds because if not, I'll destroy them. So it's definitely a 270 is the best well-rounded Western hunting rifle I can suggest that I've seen proven time and time again.
You know, and they're pretty, from what I understand. I know I bought mine for cheap. I got mine at like Bass Pro Shop. I think it's a Savage. And then I have a Remington 270. Actually, I have 2. One was a gift, and then the other one I got on sale, and I got some pretty good optics with it too, and it was pretty affordable. Definitely something you can put on a card and pay off, or not really, you know, have to take a huge hit on it. Especially going out west, you're already going to be, you know, especially for us out of staters, it's already expensive for an out of stater. So. Oh
yeah, and I mean, I 100% suggest always do something. Just because it's the most expensive thing out there doesn't mean it's the smartest thing to do. I mean, that I stand by that. And, you know, that's just like people who use certain camos. I mean, I run Badlands camos. I love them. But if you can't afford Sitka, then I've elk hunted for probably 10 years in Mossy Oak from Walmart. I mean, you don't need that high dollar stuff. 270 won't break the bank. They're readily available, used, and you can still find ammo for them right now out here.
Yeah, and you know what's good about that too, like bringing that up, and I'm really glad you went down that route, because the great thing about you saying that is it shows that anyone can do it, and that's what, like with these webinars and especially podcasts too. You know, I talk to so many people. I talk to hundreds of people a day, and I hear that all the time, like, I'm not good enough, or I can't do it because I can't afford X, Y, Z. And I'm like, you know what? As long as you can afford to get there and the tags, you can pretty much afford everything else that you need. Now, Yeah, are things going to make it a little more easier probably as far as comfortability or being comfortable? Sure. But, at the end of the day, you could get it done. You could eat ramen's expensive now, but back in the day, ramen used to be one of those things, you could eat ramen, you didn't have to eat steak every day. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, that's definitely a good thing. We've hunted out of, nice cabins and campers and stuff like that. And I've slept on the ground with a tarp over the top of me. I mean, that's just how it works. I mean, my very first backcountry experience, I packed in a sleeping bag and a tarp. That was it. And I threw that tarp up over a tree branch, and that's where I slept for 3 days. And you don't have to go outrageously expensive. I mean, like I said, there's the things that you need to splurge on and do what's best for, your health and safety. But at the end of the day, you don't need to buy the most expensive thing to come out here. It's like you said, as a non-resident, you're already putting down thousands of dollars just to get here. It's whereas, a guy like me, I'm here. It's, a couple $100. I got all my tags and I pull my camper 30 miles away. It's not a giant thing for me. And that's one of the biggest things I hear people say, I can't afford it. But, there's so many resources there. It's like you said, if you can get here, it's all possible.
Yeah, and I have looked at the tags before, and I mean, I don't want to throw off your track here of how you're doing the webinar with the information you're giving out, but if you got a chance, definitely do you know what an out-of-stater needs? I looked at some licensing, and they were definitely really expensive. So obviously, I know each price point was different, but let's say someone was to come out of state, do you know what they're supposed to get?
So if coming into the state of Wyoming, they have to put in for the draw, and they could put in for the general units for elk, or they could put in for area specific limited quota. And realistically, I mean, you need that and a conservation stamp. And if you come out here archery hunt, your archery stamp. As far as I know, that's all they require that you have. And I know, like, when you leave the state, you're supposed to have the brains removed out of your head before you take your head across state lines, just because of CWD and brucellosis and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's obviously another cost that the Game and Fish requires that you have done.
Okay. Now, as far as so what do you usually have to have as a resident? I know it's cheaper, same thing.
Yeah. So every year I buy a general elk tag, my conservation stamp, and my archer stamp, and that's all I need to go elk hunt.
Now, you only get one elk, or?
I can get up to 3, but I'm only allowed 1 full price tag. So 1 full price tag means like a bull tag, or certain limited quota tags are all full price. Like a archery only tag for, say, area 11, that's still a full price tag. And even though you can only hunt the archery season, but you're allowed 2 reduced price tags as well. So that's always a cow calf tag. And so with that being said, like as of right now, I hold 2 cow calf tags for 2 separate areas, because your cow calf are all area specific. And then I hold 1 general elk tag, which is, there's general areas throughout the entire state. And I can, in most areas, like the areas where we normally hunt, it's in any elk tag. I mean, you can take a bull, cow, calf, whatever you want to take.
Now, as far as like those elk tags, do you are they for rifle and bow, or is it different on each lottery?
So unless you put in for an archery only tag, the way most tags work is you get your actual game tag. So like your elk tag, and then got your conservation stamp, and then your archery permit is what allows you to hunt special archery season. So, I mean, other than that, the tags, when you buy your elk tag, they automatically assume you're rifle hunting. That's fair game. So, and then if you're coming from a different state, you have to have hunter safety as well. I mean, you have to have the card on you to prove it. So.
Oh, you have to have the card on you?
Yes, in the state of Wyoming, you're required to carry your hunter safety card on you.
Wow, I did not know that. That's crazy. Now, let me ask you this. Is the tags over the counter, or can you get them through like your phone?
So the way you do it is when you put in for your tags, and as a non-resident, you put in through the draw, they'll send you a paper copy. In fact, they'll send you a paper copy that looks like this. You got, your front, your dates and all that on when you harvest, and then what it is on the back. And then if you go and say you need a duplicate, they'll end up printing you off one that looks like this. It's just like a stack of tags. But you can't have them online. You have to physically have the carcass coupon with you when you harvest the animal.
Dude, I've never heard that. I've never heard you had to have your hunter safety course on you. That's so wild. Like, I think that right there is like the most valuable information. I would have got out there and wouldn't have even had it on me. I don't carry mine. It's in the safe, actually.
I know when you put in for your tags, like when I put in for my deer, when I bought my deer tag from Missouri, they asked for my hunter safety certificate number and what state it was from, and then it just showed up on my license. And as a resident, my hunter safety shows up on my license, and I'm not positive. I think after non-residents have a sportsman's ID number created, their hunter safety attaches to their tag, but they still require you to carry the card.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I look at it like this. I'd rather carry it and not need it than not have it and get busted.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll let you keep rocking. That was the tags were the question that I had, because I actually talked to two guys last year that went to Wyoming antelope hunting, and they bought a private land tag over the counter and didn't realize it and thought it was public land. A game warden actually talked to him, was like, explained it to him, but it was definitely something that they didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know how that all worked out here for like private land tags and stuff like that. I know that they have them, so that's something I couldn't even answer on. But I know that I've never had anyone come out here and pick up an over the counter like what I hunt, like general tag, because that's an over the counter to us. So that's something that I would even have to look into on that for sure.
Gotcha. And I could be wrong, man. I just know that they weren't where they were supposed to be, and the game warden was like, "This isn't the right tag." And I thought it was something with private land and public, but it could have been zone or anything.
So there are tags that are only open on private land certain times of the year. That might have been the type of deal that it was, or like on one of my deer tags, I'm allowed to hunt one of the state parks, but I have to hunt it through a certain date of the year. And certain walk-ins are only open through certain times of the year. It's really weird. That's a whole in-depth thing on the regulations you could go over for hours.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll definitely have to, for everyone, that's a great thing about networking right there. I'll throw that plug in, because if you are going to any out of state, you need to talk to someone that knows what they're doing, or at least can get you the answer, because you don't want to be caught thousands of miles away from your house and then catch a hunting charge. So we talked about weapons. We talked about footwear. We talked about the pack, 3 big things. What else do you want to kind of throw in there for intro?
So one of the biggest things, a lot of people they assume that you can find elk everywhere out here, and it's not that simple. They might be in every type of terrain, but so my biggest thing I want to tell people, you need to, when you're going into an area, you need to look at the success rates in those areas. And a lot of those can be skewed, because you might have an area that gives out 75 tags that has a 100% success rate, even though a general unit would have had like a 10% success rate, but they had 200 elk harvested out of that area. There was just that many people that hunted in there, and that'll give you an idea of what area has hunting pressure and stuff like that. I always recommend that you do e-scouting. That's something I have hunted in the same area all my life, and I still use it, because I don't know if I missed a meadow in the last 5 years of hiking around in the same area that just holds elk all the time. It's so hard to tell. So always try to start and look for sign. That's the first thing, especially if you're hunting mountainous areas. You need to find where the sign's at and figure out what level of elevation they're running at. I mean, that's one of the biggest things. I mean, even with mule deer, I've learned that if they're running at 9,000 feet of elevation and they're not running at 8,500 feet in elevation, they're running the ridge tops. I mean, that's where you got to go. I mean, they'll come through there, but they're not hammering it consistently. I mean, last year, when we took the 3 bulls 3 weeks in a row, we were at 9,200 feet in elevation, and it was obvious. I mean, there was 10-foot wide, 6-inch deep trails where these elk have been running through by the hundreds. Even though you don't see them, I mean, that's the first clue. As soon as you find that elevation and you want to look for consistency in that pattern, I mean, if they're just going over and over again, that's just like over a ridge, down to the bottom and up the next one. That just goes to show they're cutting across the ridges, whereas normally elk will run a drainage and they'll come down off of a drainage straight down it. And you can see if they're running the bottom of the drainages or the tops. And I mean, you could sit in the bottom of a drainage out here and never even see an elk. And they could have been 100 feet from you in the timber up top. So, I mean, that's the first clue. I mean, always look at your odds. Elk hunting's an odds game. It's every odd you can stack in your favor is how it works out for you. I mean, unless you're me, then it's every odd you stack against yourself is how it works out for you. Because when I shot that bull last year, I ran on 45 minutes of sleep and I was stuck and I wrecked my Bronco and everything else. So, but it's all an odds game. If you can figure out how to outsmart those elk, you'll 100% be in a better spot. And as soon as you learn their patterns, I mean, out of all the animals I've hunted, elk are most similar with white-tailed deer, turkey on the patterns. I mean, like me and you talked about earlier on the phone, Justin, it's elk or turkey run in the same area. They'll stay generally close. And I mean, elk do the exact same thing. They're like hunting a giant turkey to a sense. They talk, they're talking, they're moving, and they bed in the same area and they usually feed in the same area every day. That's just how it works. And it's a very useful thing to know because, I mean, you never want to leave elk to find elk because those elk, just because they're not there that day, just doesn't mean that they didn't move the next range over a couple hundred yards. They're there. They're not going anywhere.
Now, I had a question. I noticed on your trail cameras, you've been posting some pictures, lots of game animals on them. Like, obviously, you just kind of like set up on sign, or kind of what was your tactic when it comes to like placing those trail cameras out there?
So, I kind of have a cheating advantage with the years of experience I have in that one area. Like the one where I have the bull with one antler that I've been posting, we know that area. I mean, I first time I ever shot at an elk with a bow and hit the elk, I mean, that was that exact spot. That's where he ran through the trees at me. And so I just, winged it, threw a camera up. But I will say one of the biggest tactics I learned this year, because this is the first year I even ran trail cameras, was everyone wants to see elk in a meadow. And 95% of the time from every hunt I've been on, everything like that, and the years of family experience and all the knowledge that have been told to me, most of your hunts and successful hunts are going to be in the timber. Most of your elk are going to move through cover. I mean, they'll come across those meadows. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Last weekend, I almost got ran over by a cow elk, that came straight through a meadow, and I was sitting in the timber. I didn't realize she was in the meadow until she was on top of me. And that's just one of those things. Like, I would just always go off a sign. I mean, if it looks like elk are moving in that area, throw a camera up and you'll see if elk are moving through there or not. And I know a lot of people let their cameras sit for an extended amount of time, and we don't. We go check our cameras every 2 weeks at minimum. We still have them set up right now, and season's been going for a week already for our archery season. And that's just, they're great to have. I mean, they'll give you an idea of when they're moving and what they're doing, but there's no serious tactic other than sign on where we're setting them.
Nice. I was just curious. And I noticed that. I was like, man, I feel like I'm seeing a lot more trail camera footage than I normally see from you.
Yeah, I only had one trail camera until this last year. And I used it on that whitetail I shot the year I started with Servicide, my first whitetail. That was the only camera I had, and I had him on camera 3 days before I shot him. And so I just figured out where he was moving. I mean, the same concept runs everywhere except for the heights you set him in the tree. I mean, look for game trails, look for choking points, look for bedding areas, feeding areas, just moving in general. That's usually where we set them. I mean, we try to focus mainly on choke points where they're coming into the meadow to feed in late evenings and stuff, and they're choking down into it, and we're going right off the edge of the timber there.
Nice. So obviously when you're an out of stater, you're coming over there. Hopefully someone kind of either done some e-scouting or something, knows somewhat what's going on in the area they're hunting. So you recommend you kind of got to know, like, when you said that, I'll be honest with you, what I thought of. I thought of fishing for crappie, where if they're not biting at the bottom, you pull it up a little bit with your jig. If they're not biting there, you pull it up and you find like what depth they're at. And then once you find it, you're like, boom, 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 boom. So that obviously would be like a sound piece of advice, would be to study that area and see where they're at. And you can see, obviously they're big enough animals, you can see pretty decent trails and footprints and things like that.
Oh yeah, you're getting into hoof prints that, I mean, their hoof prints are 3 or 4 inches around. I mean, they're good hoof prints, but the only thing that you kind of got to compete with on an elk hoof print is a moose, and they're just a moose print so dang big, you might as well put your face next to it. I mean, they're huge, and not all areas have moose. I mean, just where I hunt has tons of moose. That's just common where I'm at. So yeah, I mean, it's a big thing. You just got to look, and you almost can't mistake it. And, at some point in time, I need to start taking more pictures and videos of like the areas we walk into. I mean, if those elk tracks were raised instead of indentions, that you'd be breaking an ankle tripping over them in there in some areas. I mean, just because you only have one coming in one spot doesn't mean you didn't have 20 come in 20 feet down from you. It's weird how they move like that, but usually you have one elk that's off to the one side, and then you have a herd that moves in line. So,
if I throw you off track, just jump in. Just lots of questions, especially as someone that doesn't elk hunt. How does wind? Do you factor wind into this? You talked about them running down, funnels and drainages and things like that. How do you play the wind, or how do you play that?
We try to play the wind as best as we can, but Wyoming is an extremely windy state. Most Western states that I've been to are, and that's just unfortunate how they are that way. But like where I elk hunt, you can almost guarantee the wind's coming out of the west. That's just normal. And we try, and I always suggest trying to play the wind to the best as you can, because I've been winded and it sucks. I mean, you've been out there crawling around looking for these elk, and all of a sudden, they're there. You just got to wait for them to move. And before they take that step that you need them to take, they wind you and they blow out of the area. I mean, last weekend we got winded by a big 6-point bull that was 20 feet from me. I didn't see him. I don't think he saw me, but he winded me and he blew up, and just took off. So, I mean, I always say try your best to play the wind. But on my own personal side of things, I drench myself in elk piss, dude. I bet I go through 8 ounces a weekend. And that's just how my family's done it. I mean, my uncle used to make jokes about, we brush our teeth with this, so when you blow your call, they don't smell it. And then he'd go throw in a dip of Copenhagen. I mean, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, we use as much cover scent as possible. I mean, we rub up pine trees. I had my son out this last weekend just rolling around in dirt and trees and everything else, just trying to get him to, smell all right. So wind is a huge factor in a lot of areas, but I believe in heavy cover scent and play the wind to the best you can, because you can't always play it. You can make what would be 1,000-yard stalk into a 5-mile stalk trying to play the wind sometimes, and it just doesn't seem logical to me. I'd rather watch that elk run out of my life and go find the next one the next day, versus try to kill myself coming around for a chance that might not even be there if the wind changes directions.
Nice. That's legit, man. And the last topic that I had, and I know we can go deep into this, but calling. What are you doing like right now for early season as far as calling goes?
Early season, you're doing a lot of non-vocal calls, man. I mean, I know every hunter's always been told you walk as quiet into the woods as possible. And you try with elk, but man, you don't care if you break sticks, or you step on something, or you run into a tree branch and it snaps off. It's not a huge ordeal. You got to think these animals are huge, and when they're moving, they're not quiet. I mean, they're only quiet when they really need to be, but when they're just moseying along, they're stepping on branches too. They're doing the same thing. So we do a lot of raking and stuff like that. You know, you start raking trees, but even a tree branch. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't exactly feel like carrying that around in my pack all day to sit there and rake up against a tree. So I just pick up a tree branch, and that's what I do. And I'll rake a tree and I'll hit a cow call, and I'll rake a tree and I'll hit another cow call, and I might throw out a locate bugle 30 minutes before dark. And, you know, I'm not saying it works everywhere, but it works where I'm at. I mean, you have some guys that are nonstop bugling, and it's just, I enjoy doing it, but there's a time and place for it. And then,
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you brought that up too, because that's the thing about really any information or content that you take. It works for the area that you're in, and it might work in other places. It might work great. It might not, but that's where you take everyone's different perspective. And those times where you are out west, one of these guys over here is out, you know, Lamar's over here in Wyoming, and he's chasing a bull. He'll know, like, hey, you know, if I don't need to carry this antler around to start raking. I can just take a tree branch, and make the calls that you're making.
oh yeah, I mean, ounces turn into pounds in a pack, and I bet that elk antler I just had was 5 pounds, and I just don't feel like carrying that around. Like, I know a lot of guys that actually carry deer sheds, you know, and they'll use a deer shed instead because it's so much easier to carry. But or like if you find like a small spike bull with just an eye guard, there's people that carry them things around all the time up there because it's just like carrying a tree branch. I mean, it's not bad, but you start carrying, you know, even that smaller elk shed is heavy, bulky. You slip and fall, and one of those tines stick into your back. It's just not smart. So
Yeah, I don't think I care about calling that much to be taking that all over the place.
yeah, I mean, a lot of the times, you know, it's really hard to tell someone to learn how I learned, where you sat down and just listened to them forever. I mean, there's a spot where we go out elk hunting that is just, it's constant. That's all you hear from September 1st to October 15th. That's all you hear is elk talk. And it's pretty cool, but you watch them come off of a private ranch into the public lands, and you just get to watch them forever, and you can learn them. But there's elk calls out there that are so simple. I mean, you got like a hoochie mama. That's a squeeze button call pretty much. I mean, there is a technique to it, but they work great. And I know plenty of people who don't know how to call elk that have called elk in with a hoochie mama to 20, 30 yards just by, you know, knowing how to work their volumes. You know, elk are like people. Like if you yell, you know, you're getting excited or pissed. Whereas if you're just talking normally, you know, it's a normal conversation between, like, amongst people. That's how elk are too. You know, that's why when you get these guys that are bugling, you'll hear like really small, faint bugle. That's just a bull trying to locate where something's at. Whereas you get the ones that they have a deep growl and they get super high pitched and change their pitches really fast. That's a challenge. I mean, that's a bull wanting to fight or telling you are too close. And that's, you know, that's a rabbit hole. I mean, I don't have any elk calls in here with me right now. They're all out in the thing, but yeah, there's so many easy calls. I mean, Carlton makes a call that has a push button and you just blow into it. I mean, it's literally foolproof. My buddy called in a 7x7 bull last year with one of those to 20 yards in the open prairie. And, you know, he couldn't take the shot because of the way everything played out. But there's plenty of calls out there that you can use and figure out in the matter of a day or two. I taught my son during the summer how to bugle with the same bugle that I learned with, which is a Elk's power bugle. I mean, it's literally put your mouth on it, figure out where you want to place your mouth and blow through it, and you can learn it and figure out. Then after you get the basics down, you know, I can make the sound, Then you start learning where the emotion goes.
So, Johnny, we've talked on footwear, we've talked on a pack, we've talked on kind of techniques of how you hunt. As far as in the timber, we've touched on calling, we've touched on out of state tags, a little bit of family knowledge passed down. What else do you feel like would be something good for everyone to know, when they head out of state to hunt elk for their first time?
One, if you have the ability to gain local knowledge. I mean, if you have a friend in the area, that's a huge ordeal. I mean, any member of service side that say, "Hey man, I'm coming to hunt the general elk tag in Wyoming, can you help me?" I can give them as much knowledge as I possibly can on the area. It's clear down to I'll do the e-scouting. Like there was I can't remember their name, but last year someone came to hunt whitetail in Sheridan, Wyoming. I don't even live on that part of the state, and I still went down, did e-scout, and told them this is what I know about the deer in the state and from what I've hunted, just south of there, and gave them suggestions. So I mean, always having a local person on your side, even if they don't hunt with you in the woods, is 100% a great thing. Another thing I suggest, I mean, clear to the point, I don't gut my animals by myself. Not when I'm elk hunting. I'll do a deer or something, but an elk shifts its weight just right. I mean, you could slip and fall and kill yourself. And I know from experience of people I know who've had friends cut their arteries in their legs trying to gut an elk by themselves and bled to death in the woods. So always having a person, bringing a friend along with you is always something I suggest. I mean, it's a great asset. One, they're there to help you pack out if you need it. Two, they're there to help you if something absolutely goes wrong, because your chances of breaking your leg or cutting your arm or cutting yourself, are pretty high. I mean, a lot of people think about state of Wyoming has grizzly bears, we have wolves, we have stuff like that. I see them at least one mountain lion every year. I've seen wolves the last 3 years, and I always see black bears, but black bears don't really concern me that much where I'm at. And that's something that they're always concerned about. But 95% of the time, what happens is a human error. You did something wrong, or something fell on your gear, and you ended up hurt. And trust me, you don't want to be hurt miles from the truck without someone there to help you.
Now, Johnny, do you usually, since we're talking about getting hurt, we're about 8:48 right now, my time. So probably about, a little less than 15 minutes or so left, 12 minutes. What kind of do you take anything, or does your, whoever you hunt with, do you guys have like a first aid kit or something in the vehicle?
So everyone that I hunt with usually has a first aid kit in their pack, and then a trauma pack in case something, tourniquets, blood stoppers, stuff like that, in case something really goes wrong. I mean, we try not to venture too far from the truck just for that instance. And, most of the time we're just hunting weekends. So it's really hard to drop off and take off miles back in and then justify trying to pack an elk out one day. But yeah, that's something that you got to have. I mean, there's so many good ones and there's so many bad ones. And that's just where people are going to have to do the research. I mean, I always suggest, a lot of people don't realize it, but every time I've heard about it, and several, search and rescue I've heard from out here said that, having your cell phone on you is a great thing anymore, because even though you don't have cell service, you can still let out a 911 call and it'll still do an SOS ping. And from my understanding, I mean, I could be completely wrong on that, but from everyone I've talked to, or if you can get a call out, that's a huge thing. And, the goal is to come into the woods and come out of the woods in the same way, just with a little bit of heavier back on you. And that's where it boils down to. I mean, you have to be safe and you have to be ready for the worst case scenario, because it could happen. It might not happen. Most of the time it doesn't happen. But I mean, everyone wants to go home and see their family at the end of the day. And no animal's worth it anywhere for that.
Yeah, for sure, man. We actually just did a podcast with John Turman. He is out of, sorry, I can't remember. I think, oh man, tip of my tongue. He just moved there. I want to say Idaho. Yeah, Idaho. So he's in Idaho, and he moved from Colorado, from Arizona to Colorado, then Colorado to there. But we actually did recently a first date out west podcast I'm gonna be putting out this week. But yes, that's huge. People neglect that safety. You know, safety is a big thing. I just watched a TikTok or something the other day where a guy was bow hunting and carrying his bow, and his freaking broadhead sliced his artery, and they had to get him out. And if he wasn't with other people, there's no way he would have lived.
Yeah, no, that's a really scary thing. I mean, I I've seen people get hurt and I've seen people get lost. I mean, I always suggest a good GPS too. I mean, to each their own. I use my cell phone with Onyx. I have a GPS, but I bet that thing's as old as I am. So I don't even think it exactly works anymore, but I still have it. But I use my phone, and that's a very important thing too, because sometimes, like after our wildfire, our landmarks aren't the same as they used to be. I could get easily lost in our wilderness areas because all landmarks I knew are gone. So, I mean, that's always something that to keep in mind for sure. I mean, I wish that we had, a little more time to break down into more of, in depth on elk. And I mean, there's just so many things that you can go down. And this is just my basic knowledge of what I can say is 100% what I stand by. I always, during the rut, and which is about to start. I mean, we got a cold snap coming in this weekend, and I bet the rut kicks off then. And during the rut, I mean, your calling techniques are hot and heavy, and you're moving, and that's something I always suggest too. If you stop when you're calling, they're going to pinpoint you, and that could be a whole nother, webinar or podcast or 2-hour long movie at the end of it. By the time you can really explain how elk communicate and stuff like that, or when it comes to finding elk, I always suggest find the sign, go off the sign, see where they're moving. I stand by that. That's the way I've hunted for the last 14 seasons. That's the way I'm going to continue to hunt. So, I mean, I'm not a professional by any means, but I have a lot of years of doing it where I'm at, and I shot my biggest bull ever in an area I've never even been. So I shot that 330-inch bull a couple years ago in an area I've never stepped foot in. It was just luck of the draw. I mean, that's just how it worked. I went off the same things I knew, and I knew elk were running in that area.
Now, I did have a question. I know you didn't. You might have mentioned this, and we got about 5 minutes left. So while I'm asking this, everyone that's in the if you could in the chat bar, drop your questions for Johnny before we wrap it up here. But do you usually pack out the elk, or how do you usually get them out of there?
So we usually quarter them and then pack them out. A lot of people use gutless method, but me and my hunting partner still gut. It's just to get them inner loins out. That's a delicacy, and there's not a whole lot there, but we'll still gut, because one, it makes it a lot easier to roll that animal around once they're lighter weight. But we'll quarter them. I mean, that's just a quarter at a time for however far. I mean, me and him can pack a half an elk at a time, one front, one hind together, and then split back straps, and we can make it out one trip. But there ain't no use for, killing ourselves or giving ourselves a heart attack doing it. So, break it down to what you can carry safely out. And that's how we've always done it. I mean, hell, the kids even help. My boy carried the heart and the back straps out last year, back strap. I posted the pictures last year, and it was with that podcast I did. Those back straps, are 30, 40 inches long, and I'm holding them in my hands. I bet there was 20 pounds of meat on each one of them back straps.
And yeah, that was a solid picture, man. That was probably one of my favorite pictures. I wanted to use it for this one, but I'm gonna save it.
But that's a huge thing, man. I mean, you gotta do everything at your pace. Just because I can do it doesn't mean someone else can do it. Every out of state hunter, for 95% of it, are coming from a lower elevation. I mean, you're what? When we did the meetup, you were talking about being 60 feet below sea level or something like that, or
Yeah, I'm like 67 feet below sea level or something like that.
yeah. And see where I live, I'm 7,000 feet in elevation. You know, I can do it at this elevation a lot longer than someone like you coming out here.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
you know, I'm a smoker, especially if someone else is a smoker. I mean, coming out here, I know a gentleman that comes from Georgia every year to deer hunt and antelope hunt, and his best friend died in Casper, Wyoming, during a deer hunt because he had a heart attack, lack of oxygen, and it's just, you know, never overdo yourself. You start feeling woozy. That, like I said, no animal's worth your life. And if you're coming from out of state, I always suggest, you know, almost every store around here has those boost oxygen cans. Always take one of those with you, and you know, pace yourself. You know, I know it sucks, but take a day hunting at lower elevation, even if you don't see anything, just for your body to acclimate a little bit. Versus, you know, coming from sea level to 9,000 feet in elevation and thinking you're going to keep up with the guys that are up here doing it every single year and living in it. It's just, your health is more important than that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the great thing about this webinar. And I feel like it ties really well into intro because it's setting that expectation. It's letting people know what they should be ready for. You know, it sounds like to me, you better be hitting a Stairmaster if you live, you know, in a non, you know, Rocky Mountain state or high elevation state, that you need to have a pack on, you need to be hiking, you need to be hitting the Stairmaster, or you need to be walking hills or walking benches at football stadiums or something with a pack on. And especially if you want to get that elk out in one trip, it sounds like you better be putting some bricks in there. You definitely, I'm sure that the West destroys a lot of people. Obviously, it really sucks that guy lost his life, and our condolences to his family. But you know, when you're going out west, and everyone has their own health issues and things like that. When you're going out west, it definitely sounds like you need to be more fit than not, for sure. Especially if you're not from there and you don't know, you don't know the shortcuts, you don't know the best routes. You've never been there before for the most part. So
yeah, and you know, another thing is a lot of people don't understand their limits because, you know, like when I went down hunting in Georgia, dude, I could walk forever down there. It was flat for the most part where I was hunting, and it was, you know, the oxygen content was higher in the air. I felt great. I could walk forever, but like up here, I know what my limitations are, and I'll have to pace myself. And I mean, it's funny that you said fit to hunt when I'm sitting here wearing a shirt that says not fit to hunt, but you know, that's something about it. It's
yeah, you know what, man? It goes by where you're from. I'm not in shape. I'm probably the most out of shape I've ever been in my life. And I would walk circles around anybody that comes down here and hunts with me for the simple fact of I'm used to hunting in 90 to 100 degree weather. It doesn't matter how big or how small I am. I know how much water to bring. I know when to start putting my little mountain hydration packets. You know, I know when I'm feeling that headache coming along. Like I know when I need to stop, and I know how quick you can go downhill, because once you hit heat stroke here, that's it. Once you got that headache, you might as well just go back to the truck, because it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. There's no turning back. So knowing those signs, but same with you. It doesn't, you don't have to be having a six-pack to hike those mountains. You do it. You've been doing it for 14 years. You've been doing it your whole life. So it's a muscle memory. It's a whole different ball game when you live there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I totally agree. And I mean, I'm glad you brought up water, because I actually did forget one thing. When I said ounces turn into pounds in a pack, a water filter, I use a LifeStraw water filter, guys. That thing is, you're going to need water. And it might be a while before you come across water. So always have at least one bottle or a water bladder in your pack. But I know so many people who go in there and they pack in these plastic water bottles, and they put 10 of them in their pack and have no water filter. And then they're like, oh, I'm out of water by the end of the day. And it's just, you end up dehydrated. And even though we don't have the humidity, I know hunting in the humidity, even in the cold or the hot, you dehydrate fast. And out here, we don't have that. And a lot of people don't think about it. And, you're hunting at 60 degrees versus 90 degrees. And it's just, you don't a lot of people don't realize, even though it's so much different, it still takes so much out of you. And it's, there's a lot of do's and don'ts. And like I said, I've been typing up a whole couple pages worth already of a list of things that I suggest and all the things I stand by, and that, I'm willing to send out to people. It's nothing that is a big deal. I mean, I've had multiple people reach out to me, and, one-on-one, I can give everyone the information that they want and need, but it's so hard to cover such a wide, broad topic. And I mean, I know there's a lot that I even missed with this. So.
Oh, you're good, man. I feel like we've covered the basics pretty well. As far as your perspective of hunting elk in Wyoming. So we can always do podcasts or webinars in the future if we have to go in more depth. But I definitely appreciate it. I definitely think that was a huge help. And if anything, man, I feel like it gets people too, where maybe they'll get that glimmer of hope of like, hey, obviously, I know how it is, man. I have someone down here every year hunting with me. I still get that thing in my head where I'm like, man, it's your woods, and not your woods, but you know what I mean? Like it's still your state, and nobody wants to see thousands of people kicking down the door to come hunt another state. But with that being said, I really like that, especially with you being a service side member, you've always been a team player, and, you'd rather someone be successful than not. When it comes to that. So I definitely think that intro is going to give people that, that confidence to know like, hey, this is something I can do. I don't need $5,000 worth of clothing, or, a $1,000 pack, or, $2,000 boots. I don't need all that. It'd be, it makes it more convenient, but you definitely don't need it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that you said that. I when I hunt, just so everyone kind of gets an idea of that, I wear my one pair of thin Badlands pants with some long johns underneath it, and my Browning hoodie that I bought for my dad the year he died, and my Badlands flex hoodie on top of it, the quarter zip flex. That is all I wear. It can be 30 degrees out and I'm still elk hunting in that. I'm not elk hunting in anything else. So, I mean, when you said, thousands of dollars in clothing, I mean, you might want to bring about $100 worth of socks and underwear because you're going to stink at the end of the week, but that's about it. Like, I have $150 wrapped up in camos, I bet maybe 200, and I've worn them for 3 years and had no problems. I mean, you'll get your money's worth out of whatever you buy. I mean, if you're coming out here for an elk hunt, buy Walmart camos. I hunted elk out of Walmart camos, like I said, and they'll hold up for at least the season, and that's all you need them to do. You don't need them to, last forever when you pay $20 for a pair of pants. It'd be cool if they did, but I mean, you don't need to drop all that money. There's no need to drop all that money. You can buy a cheap 2-man tent, a decent pack, a decent pair of boots, and come out with the things you have. And especially, I stand by this 100%. Humid cold is 10 times worse than Wyoming's cold. I've hunted Missouri in the middle of muzzleloader season in January. I am good. I will stick my ass right back here. It is cold, and I don't do humid well. I just don't. I had on 7 layers. I had on Carhartts to go deer hunting with a bow and a muzzleloader. I'm good. You guys can keep the humidity. We're dry out here, and it don't go straight to your bones as you walk out of the house. So you don't need all that. Whatever you guys got, you can come with, and it's not gonna make or break you.
All the states I've went to, and we can wrap it up here too. I'll let you, lead us out and leave the guys with something here. But, one thing I've noticed when I go to other states, I never started investing into, I wouldn't even say more expensive. I use Badlands too, because, we get 50% off and they have an unlimited warranty. But I didn't start buying the more expensive, like cold weather stuff, until I started going to those other states and checking out to see exactly what I needed. So like, I didn't pre-buy a bunch of, I didn't say, hey, I've got to buy every single Badlands cold weather item before I go to Ohio in December. I went up there, I took what I thought I would need that I already kind of had and layered up and things like that. And then once my first trip was done, then I was like, okay, hey, I probably should get some type of like wind, sub-zero jacket or something for those days where the wind was really cutting through me, or, hey, I should bring an extra pair of socks to I brought a pair of socks and it was too thick and I couldn't get my foot in it without it like going numb. So, next time I knew like, hey, I'm going to bring a little thinner and layer them up. So you definitely, I always encourage people, you don't need to go out and drop a bunch of money. And if you want to do that after, go for it. But check it out first, because you might get out west and be like, man, this is not for me. And it was fun. Or you might kill your elk or antelope and never come back again. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's like I told you, you can come out and hunt antelope in September with a rifle at the same time people are elk hunting with a bow. And I mean that from the plains to the mountains of 10 miles you're going to go, it's going to be an extreme difference, but in weather. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like I said, come with what people have. There's no reason to go buy, the highest dollar stuff I think I've seen is Sitka that I personally have seen in stores around here. I know Sitka people run it. I have my own feelings about it. I personally have my feelings about it because I don't like spending a bunch of money on stuff. But I mean, with the same rifle I've hunted with since I was 13, I the same way as you, I didn't buy expensive weather gear until I think I was 23 years old, and that I finally decided it's time to get some nice cold weather gear, and that I understand that. So.
Dude, you went farther than me, man. I didn't buy my first really expensive type of hunting stuff until weapons don't count, just gear, until I was probably maybe 27, 28.
Yeah, I mean, I bought my Badlands at a pawn shop. It was in the pawn shop for dirt cheap. That's what I bought. It was a used Badlands pack. But I mean, like you said, if you're coming out here and you can afford the tags and the way out here, after that, it'll all fall together. Some of the best hunts are the ones you're most unprepared for. At the end of the day, that's just, no matter how much you prepare, you'll never prepare for the moment that you actually get to put your hands on them anyways.
Nice. Well, man, I appreciate it. I don't see any questions on here, so I think we're good. But I definitely.
You froze up, Justin.
Sorry, did I cut it out on you?
Yeah, you froze up pretty good. I was trying to see if I was.
So I was just saying I appreciate you jumping on, man. I'm glad I only cut out once, though. So I appreciate you jumping on. I've been wanting to hear your perspective on elk hunting for a while, especially after your season last year. So I really enjoyed that, and hopefully the team did also.
Yeah, we're off to the same start this year. One down, 5 to go. And then we got 4 deer and 2 antelope as well, all in 2 month span. So we're going to see if we can do it.
Well, good luck, man. I appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions for Johnny, where can these guys reach you at?
So Facebook is usually about the best way. Instagram, I have 2 Instagrams. One is outdoors, and the other one is _hunter_96. You guys can get a hold of me on there, or you can get a hold of me on my Facebook. That's honestly the best method. I never suggest anyone else, maybe because I have a hard enough time keeping up with my emails in general. So, and if you want to talk on the phone, get a hold of me, and I'll give you my number. That's not something I'm against. If you're weird, I can block you. So it ain't that big.
Oh man, weirdos. But all right, man. Well, shoot, bro. I appreciate it, and we'll get you back on soon. Hopefully, we get you on the podcast, and we can maybe talk a little bit of calling, or really whatever anyone wants to hear. So we'll always keep it up for the team and try to figure out what people want to hear, and we'll give it to them.
Yeah, hopefully this weekend I can be posting some pictures of something dead rather than trail camera pictures. So,
well, you just keep at it, man. You'll get them.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the sunset and wondering if I should run out tonight and try to shoot one, but I got work early in the morning. I probably better not.
Oh, you'll get out there. But all right, everybody. Well, I appreciate y'all jumping on. We will get this up into the Hunt Lab hopefully by tomorrow. If not, definitely by the weekend. And Johnny, I appreciate it, man.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
All right, later, everybody.
Later.